What is R word by deception? I am heavily censoring myself due to YouTube guidelines, and this is a very triggering topic. I know it is for me because I've always known lying for and deceiving for relations is wrong and gross and icky, and you're a disgusting human being that doesn't understand consent or doesn't care about consent if you do it. But to actually recognize it as a law I didn't know existed in my state of Texas until a year ago. And then I had to reevaluate, and not had to as in I forced myself. My brain just automatically started thinking about all the relationships I've been in, the times I were lied to, the circumstances I was lied to, and I have found that I myself have been a victim of this many times. When you have to lie, you're not truly gaining consent. Consent is 100% informed consent. Consent is understanding the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how. And without this understanding, without this knowledge, without the truth, it is not consent. And it doesn't even matter if this is about a certain relations or anything else, like your property, your body. In other ways, it's legal to have a fight in Texas. But if you make rules, like for instance, you want to fight in Texas with somebody, y'all make the agreement that y'all are gonna have a timer. The second this timer goes off, it's over. And then that timer goes off, you are hands off, but then that person takes advantage and continues on. Well, they have gone beyond consent at that point. That is a crime. They will be arrested. That's how that works, right? Your medical treatment, any legal document you sign, any legal agreement that you sign, these are all consent based. The reason you're able to charge someone with a crime or to hold someone civilly liable is because the infringement of consent. They either went back on their consent, they didn't fulfill their consent, or something had changed with the consent, or it was a lie or a deception. We usually call this also fraud. So, there are many ways people lie, many ways people lie, but some of the most popular ones that people will argue about is lying about your relationship status. When someone asks you if you are single, that automatically implies they are looking for someone single. So if you are not single and say that you are and y'all have relations, well, congratulations, that's R word by deception. If you are asking someone if they're on birth control or if they've been fixed or they're infertile, yada yada, you don't want to have children. That's what you're trying to prevent here, right? And they say that they are able to prevent it, but that is a lie. Whether or not a pregnancy occurs, that is still R word by deception. And if pregnancy occurs, we usually call that entrapment, but it is still also R word by deception. This is the issue that we have here. And it's funny as enough, it is a law. It is a literal law in my state. And it's not being upheld. People get away with this. Why are people getting away with this? It's because the people here believe, well, these things are a gray area. No. Stop saying gray area. When it comes to consent, there is no gray areas. It's severity. It's just severity. Okay, that's like sitting there saying, well, it's not really would you really call it an infection if one person has, what's it called? Crap. What is it called? It's when they go septic, right? If one person's septic and one person only has like an ear infection, they're still infections. One is just worse, right? One is very deadly. One is if you don't get treatment right now, you are going to pass. And the other is more manageable, more treatable, but they are still both infections. When you go against consent, you're going against consent, and in whatever connotation that is, with the type of consent given, whichever way it is in case by case, going against that has its own severities. So when it comes to R word, there's severities, but there isn't a gray area. There is no such thing as a gray area when it comes to not having someone's consent for something. That is not a gray area. Which you are referring to is, oh, well, I don't know if that's actually that bad. Like, what should the punishment actually be for that? Okay, we can talk about that. We can talk about that because I agree. I have been pushed down into my bed, R worded in my sleep, woken up to that. It is not the same from the R word by deception. But when you live in a society where it is severely common to do this, just as when you have an infection, you get another infection and another infection and another, your chances of going septic goes up. You can't heal. And eventually, with the amount of infections you're getting, you're becoming immune to certain antibiotics, steroids. Your body's not going to be able to function properly. It's the same thing. Over time, the more it happens, the worse you get. Personally, I feel like I've been going absolutely mad over this topic. It has haunted me for this past year. And the more and more I've gone throughout this year, the more I've realized it's happened in this case. It's happened in another case. I got so angry and turned off by everything else. I had already started practicing abstinence before then. And the fact that people don't care, except when it happens to them, makes me very angry. Because I know plenty of men who are sitting there saying, yeah, those who are entrapping us into be fathers should get the death penalty. Okay. Then all you men saying that you are single when you're not and lying in other ways should also get the death penalty. Because it's R word by deception. It's the same crime. See, we're weaponizing against women specifically when we take stances like that. You see it all the time as well with, oh, these women need to serve the same sentences if they lie about this situation. Okay, if you can 100% prove it's a lie, yeah, they should receive criminal charges. And in fact, we have a criminal charge for that. We do. We do. We do. And the ones that are found to be 100% lying, they do get charged. In fact, if you actually look up the studies are what makes me so furious with this. We see that more women, despite the fact, lie specifically on these crimes, are so small. You are more likely to be struck by lightning twice than to have a lie on you, despite them being so small. Despite the fact that you have to prove without a doubt that they did or did not do the thing, and then you have to turn around and say they did or did not lie. These people forget as well that witness statements sometimes are incorrect. And it's not that people are intentionally lying, they are misremembering, they misidentified. Significantly, especially back in the day, especially when technology and DNA not being as advanced as it is now. We unfortunately have had locked up quite a few people that did not deserve to be locked up because they looked too similar, they were in the wrong place, wrong time, and they got charged when they were truly innocent. But that doesn't change that the R word happened. It was just the wrong person. And we do still see this today. We do see this especially the most with children, actually. Children will misremember things a lot. But we also see this the most when women are drugged. obviously they're not going to remember the details correctly. So we are weaponizing constantly on this. This is layers and layers and layers of misogyny and sexism throughout history that is still continuing to this day. Because in my eyes, there should be no difference with this law, with entrapment. Shouldn't be calling it just entrapment. That's our word by deception. Right? It's no different than when men do it. Yet men don't care until it happens to them. Not all men, obviously. Women do this too. Obviously. Obviously, we're talking about that. Women are guilty of this, but it's the attitude from men. It's the fact that I've talked to so many men, and strangely enough, the men that fight me the least are the ones that are typically a part of the LGBT community, where they also are attracted outside of the typical. They're not hetero, or they're not cisgendered. And it's just, why? Just why? Just why? I don't understand it. I don't understand when people will sit there and then weaponize, like, all of it really just truly feels, at the end of the day, some of it I do know is genuine not understanding. Genuine, I wasn't taught this way and I'm having trouble seeing it this way. I was taught completely different. All right, got it. Then you need to educate yourself more. Do studies, do some research, figure it out. Like, I've been trying to figure this out for over for a year now, right? Trying to figure all this out, trying to figure out this specific straight male perspective, because it's been a trend this whole year. Women I've talked to, again, the only woman that I've talked to that is like, yeah, I don't know if that should really even be a law or anything, is my own mother, okay? And I know why she has that, because she has a twisted idea on what consent is, because she wasn't taught correctly what consent was, and her consent wasn't taken into consideration in her own history. I understand that, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Consent is consent. Anything outside of the consent is not consent. It's as simple as that. So when you go outside of the consent, it is wrong. It is wrong. Each and every time it is wrong. There is no gray areas. It's severity. I am so angry with the attitude. And I feel like it's just getting worse, honestly. It feels like it is just getting worse and worse and worse. I am a born and raised Texan, and I've always gotten pushbacks for my beliefs. But in the past 2 years specifically, even though I have limited my online presence, I have gotten the most pushback. And it's all on topics about R word and PDF files. And that scares me. It's not like I have the ability to just take my children and leave the state. And I shouldn't have to seek asylum in another state in order to be around people that understand what consent is. So instead, I have to talk about these things. I have to also educate my own children on consent and what consent actually is. And hope. And once my kids are in school, write letters to the school asking and petitioning for them to properly teach it. It is so disheartening because it's so funny to sit there and say that you don't know, you didn't understand, you weren't taught this way, but then to turn around and say, oh, well, these topics need to just be taught at home. It sounds to me that you actually don't think what you did is wrong. That's what that actually sounds to me. No, because if you truly believe that something is wrong, you would want to educate as much people as possible. At least that is for me. Once I know something is wrong, I go on about it. I like to talk all about it. I just learned this. Look at this. This is crazy. Oh my goodness. And then I look at this and I make sure whatever it is, if it's something that I do, I don't do that again. If it is something I've never done, but I know what it is, I'm gonna keep my eyes out to make sure I don't do it. And I talk about these things. So I find it hard to believe. I find it really hard to believe that when people say that these topics shouldn't be in our schools, that they aren't actively participating or have participated or is enabling behavior for more victims to happen. Education helps prevent these things from happening in the first place. We know that children who are aware of their anatomy are less likely to be assaulted. And we know they're more likely to speak up and to be able to go to court and to be able to press charges. It is important to be educated. It isn't a privilege to be educated, it is a basic human right to be educated, to have a basic understanding of the world. And that basic understanding should include consent. That is the foundation of all our laws. This is a maddening topic, honestly. Um, but it has to be talked about. It truly needs to be talked about more within all levels of consent, every single which way. There's so many cases of medical stuff going on, right? And consent with medical. And then you have things with consent with even understanding your rights as a renter, a tenant, your tenant rights and what you're consenting to. And all of these things are consent. And it just blows my mind that we are making this separation, but it makes sense at the same time in the eyes of oppressor. You want to separate this idea of consent as the oppressor so that way you're not getting that pushback, so you can rally people onto your side. And we need to stop. It's the same. Consent is consent no matter the context, and without consent for something that is deserving of consent, that is wrong. When you go against the consent, when you don't get the proper consent, when it's not 100% the way it should be, there's no coercion. You got coercion? No coercion, no influence of drugs. You know how many times doctors get sued because they pressure people into signing information when they're under the influence of a medication where they're not supposed to be signing anything until it's out of their. That happens all the time. And when it gets to courts, the they're held responsible for that. Consent is huge, and it is a part of how our entire world works. And changing it for one area, any area, we start changing consent with medical, we start changing consent with self defense, being able to defend yourself. You're changing it for everything. That's what's going to happen. That's how these changes happen. We wonder, well, how do these countries evolve? This country used to be so good and they evolved and now the people are not free. This is how we start changing consent. That's how that happens. That's a huge way how it happens. And it scares me that we're walking down this line. It scares me we're walking down this way. It scares me. I fear for my children. I fear for our future. I had children because I want my children to become functional adults. I wanted to help raise a part of society by having my own children and raising them to be functional adults. I want my children to practice consent fully. And they deserve to have their consent recognized. And it scares me that we are limiting it more and more, especially I feel in the past few years. The fact that certain laws are being changed, the fact that certain things have been taken away, certain things. This is a basic human rights issue, truly. We need consent. Even outside the bedroom. We can't be taking it away. My next video, I will be tackling a song lyric for certain. But I just needed to make this. I needed to talk about this. It's really bugging me, honestly. It's really getting under my skin, and it has for the last year. And it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. And it is so infuriating. Just so infuriating to see.